Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today. I'm delighted to welcome you here for the first Co-op Party Live of 2025. I'm Daniel Monahan. I'm the Policy Officer at the Co-operative Party. And this evening, we're going to speak about retrofit cooperatives and community energy groups and their role in boosting the UK's energy efficiency through undertaking retrofit work, which can help to lower bills, improve our energy usage, and meet our net zero targets. Before I introduce this evening's speakers, I just want to run through a few tips and housekeeping rules for this event. Firstly, for those who are hard of hearing, we'll be live captioning this event. And if you want to view these captions, you need to enable them yourself by pressing the CC icon on the bottom tools panel of your phone or computer. This Zoom call is also being recorded, as many of our members are not always able to access it live, and as such, it will be available on the Co-op Party's YouTube channel. So if you don't want your image to be seen as part of this evening's event, then simply remove yourself from video and just go to audio only. In order to prevent disruptions, only those who are speaking will have their sound enabled. And once we've heard from today's speakers, we will hold a Q&A session, and there are two ways which you can ask a question. The first is to post any questions or comments in the chat box, which will be moderated, and we'll pick them up. And the second would be to raise your virtual hand, and when it's your turn to speak, we'll invite you to unmute and ask your question to our speakers. And then finally, please bear in mind the Co-op values and principles when contributing, and make sure everyone feels welcome, safe, and respected as part of tonight's event. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for this evening in running order. So first we'll have Jonathan Atkinson from Carbon Co-op. We have Harriet Sansom from the Centre for Sustainable Energy. We have Afshin Rashid from Repowering London. And we have Councillor Sam Pallis, Deputy Cabinet Member for Inclusive Economy at the Hackney Council. So thank you all. I'll pass over to yourself now, Jonathan.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks very much, Daniel. And yeah, it's really exciting to be here and talking about retrofit co-ops. It seems since the election last year, there's been a lot of talk about how retrofit co-ops might play a role in the decarbonisation of the housing stock that we know needs to happen and hasn't been happening fast enough. So yeah, I'm going to talk about a couple of co-ops that I'm part of. I'm actually not content with just one co-op, part of two co-ops, and the different things that we do and how that's part of the solution, really. I think I just wanted to briefly say that really there's many different reasons why retrofit co-ops might be part of the solution, but the Clean Power Plan that came out just before Christmas, which is the NESO, which is one of the energy system kind of operators, plan, has within that plan for clean power by 2030 specific requirement for energy efficiency, for demand reduction. We're not going to create the clean energy we need to if we don't reduce the amount of demand that we have by doing things like insulating our homes. Okay, so yeah, I'm part of two cooperatives. I was involved in setting up both of them. One is Carbon Co-op and one is People Powered Retrofit. The second came out of the first, and I'll talk about the different kind of remits and roles of both in this session. But being very kind of slightly clumsily kind of drawing a line between the two, People Powered Retrofit is a one-stop shop for retrofit and is often what people talk about when they mean a retrofit co-op. So it's a service that you go to. It's structured like a co-op. So members are clients and investors and what have you. It's quite social enterprise. It's trading focused. We generate income from services and helping people to retrofit their homes. Carbon Co-op are involved in retrofit in a number of different ways, but one of the ones I want to talk to you about tonight is a place-based approach to retrofit. So Carbon Co-op are more of a community energy organisation, do a range of different things, outreach, awareness raising, a lot of delivery as well. But yeah, we've in particular taken a place-based approach, an area-based approach to retrofit. So these two are actually quite complementary. They are different and distinct in different ways. But yeah, it helps you kind of map the kind of environment there is there for retrofit co-ops. Okay, so Carbon Co-op, We've been around since 2011. We've got 350 members. These are people, it's a community benefit society, so people committed to tackling climate change in our homes and communities. And Carbon Co-op has quite a broad reach, as I said, delivers holistic kind of energy services, from energy generation to energy services to smart boxes that go in homes, and has real driving principles around deep retrofit, energy justice, and collective action in homes and communities. We do stuff in Manchester. We're based in Greater Manchester, but we also replicate models and work with others around the UK and indeed around the EU. We got involved in retrofit many years ago, more than 10 years ago. We did a big program called the Community Green Deal. This was with some government assistance. We did a deep retrofit program for 10 houses around Greater Manchester. We offered 0% interest loans. We did the design work for people, procured a contractor on their behalf. It was a really interesting, fascinating project, generated loads of learning. Was quite a pilot project though, so not really massively replicable, but generated loads of learning and knowledge and built our name as well. Moving on from that into something that is a bit more replicable, we're now thinking more and more about area-based approaches to retrofit. This is a rather sketchy diagram, but at the bottom you can see many different houses, and you have an area-based intermediary, which is a retrofit co-op, Carbon Co-op in this context. And what the intermediary is doing is aggregating demand from householders, aggregating finance for the householders to do the retrofit, employing a designer, procuring a contractor, and working with other local institutions like local authorities. And the area-based element is working in streets and small areas of communities with similar types of housing, similar typology of housing. So you can aggregate delivery, you can gain scale, you can create an offer that's visible in an area and involve more and more people in that. So we are doing that at the moment. We're on site in Levenshulme in South Manchester for the LEV ABS, or area-based scheme, Levenshulme area-based scheme. And this has been a couple of years in development. So we've involved, we profiled an area, we recruited householders, we've engaged them in the process. So that's one of the advantages of a co-op, where it's not just something you have done to you, you're involved in the process. And the works are on site at the moment. We've been able to aggregate finance from grants, but also to use a 0% interest loan from Manchester City Council, which is a fantastic offer to bring to kind of householders. And this is an area of high fuel poverty, so these aren't necessarily the richest people. So we've got a loan product from Manchester City Council. We've also worked with a social enterprise contractor called B for Box, and they're doing apprenticeship learning and training on site. So you're bringing together all these great things, you know, a great contractor, aggregated finance, involvement of a local authority, and high quality retrofit with engaged householders. I won't go into this in detail, but there's a whole blueprint online, and we worked with Connected Places Catapult to kind of develop this. If you're interested in doing similar in your area. So some of the features of an area-based scheme: it's collaborative, bringing together partners within the context of a place. You're creating a guaranteed pipeline of projects. So you're bringing house after house within an area, and that means supply chain can build in that area and do training. There's great opportunities for blended finance. That's grants, there's loans, there's contributions from the householder, blending that together to make it retrofit more easy. Local economic development, again, place-based, and can involve multiple tenures as well. So we can work with social housing and private as well. And there's a strong ability to scale. There's only half a dozen houses on this phase, but we can grow. We can use the infrastructure that we've already got and grow simply. There's a couple of links there, and yeah, we'll be sharing the slides. Okay, so that's an area-based approach to retrofit, a retrofit co-op, Carbon Co-op. People-powered retrofit, also Community Benefit Society, came out of the work we've been doing in Carbon Co-op, where we realized there was a lot of demand for fee-earning services, but not a lot of capacity. We raised, through a community share issue, money to establish it in 2021. 350 members, 14 members of staff, based in Greater Manchester. Again, work around that area. It's an end-to-end service. People come to us, we give them what they need to do a retrofit, an assessment, help them find contractors, and meets the needs of householders. And we can also engage in the process, or we do engage in supply chain development and training. I think this is about understanding what are the blocks to householders to retrofit their homes. Those around complexity and technical detail, difficulty making key decisions. It's really complicated, concerned about the risks, confused about conflicting advice they might hear from, different websites, different people, problems finding contractors, and worries about having high quality works. So we've designed the service, and it was in design for 3 years running up to 2021. It's a complete retrofit service from a single trusted point of contact, with a retrofit advisor helping, signposting and help, an assessment to go into the home, give people a plan for their retrofit, and a full design detail service for people. Worked with more than 200 clients in the last 3 years. And we do a range of different outreach activities as well. This again is the thing about a co-op. We're going beyond the kind of like just doing a retrofit or retrofit that's done to people. We're involving people in those solutions and contributing to the wider kind of community here and the wider efforts around climate change and indeed tackling retrofit more broadly. One thing I want to highlight is we're running now a community of practice with retrofit co-ops around the country. So this is our network, and we've added another one in the last few weeks as well in Sussex. So you can see this is cooperatives cooperating together through mutual aid, through like federated support, and we've just received funding to create a more structured learning project here. I think we will achieve scale through working together, through creating these communities of practice and replicating what works in one area in another area. Again, another benefit of cooperatives. Just to flag then, so that's Carbon Corp and that's People Powered Retrofit. I wanted to flag a few other kind of things to highlight. One thing I would say is in Ireland and in the EU in general, they are pushing ahead with this agenda. One-stop shops for retrofit are in the new Energy Performance Buildings Directive, and they're being implemented over the next few years in all the member states. And in Ireland in particular, they've got great tie-ins, not just with retrofit, but with credit unions as well. So again, not just cooperatives delivering, but cooperative finance as well. Some great offers. So just end with a couple of recommendations. For local authorities, I would recommend engaging retrofit co-ops in your area or encouraging their development. Look at progressive approaches to procurement or joint ventures, because lots of local authorities want to do retrofit. So how can we work together to deliver those? Assess potential for council funding mechanisms to be deployed, e.g. for retrofit co-op projects, just like Manchester City Council have, and now other councils want to do the same. And assess how co-ops can play a role in public retrofit schemes. And finally, for government, just kind of 3 kind of recommendations. We'd really advocate for government to pilot a one-stop shop program here in the UK, as they've done in other areas of Europe, with an explicit retrofit co-op stream to it. Business development, we know that's top of the agenda at the moment, especially for co-ops. Have something around new retrofit co-ops in there and support for their development. And thirdly, make a plan. We've seen this work in many different parts of the EU, funding the development of home retrofit plans. And why not fund retrofit cooperative providers directly to go out into their communities and develop plans for people within those communities, rather than complex kind of market-based systems. You can pay for those plans, and then people have a plan and they know what they need to do, and they can get out there and do it. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. That was really interesting. I think gave a really great oversight of what you guys are doing and also the model and how it can be replicated going forward. So thank you. Now I'll pass over to Harriet. I think you've got a presentation as well, so I'll pass over to you.
Yes. Hopefully this works. Can everyone see that if I do that? Is that
works for me? Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thanks Jonathan for that. I'm taking a bit of a step back and talking about some research that we did, which kind of looked at what is happening with non-profit retrofit delivery across England, and what are some of the barriers and what are some of the recommendations that can be put forward to support more non-profit organisations from doing retrofit delivery. Oh, let's check that. So just briefly, so I'm Harriet Sanderson from the Centre for Sustainable Energy. In case you don't know who we are a charity based in Bristol. We've been around for over 45 years, and kind of broadly we support people and organisations to tackle the climate emergency and end the suffering caused by cold homes. So we do a lot of work with fuel poor households. We have a domestic retrofit team within the charity. We support community organisations with non-domestic retrofit, for example, of the community buildings that they might lease or own. And we have also helped set up a CIC called Retrofit West, which is all around kind of trying to drive forward domestic retrofit in the West of England region. So yeah, it was really nice to see us in kind of Jonathan's community of practice list of organisations. We're very much about, our approach is very much about kind of sharing learning and working with other organisations. The research that I wanted to share with you all today was funded by Access, which is the Foundation for Social Investment. So they're a kind of organisation that supports the social investment sector. And they kind of came to us with this research question, which is, what is the potential for the non-profit sector, so charities, social enterprises, and other non-profit organisations, to kind of take advantage of this need and opportunity that we have for the retrofitting of our buildings in England. They kind of had a specific interest in non-domestic retrofit, but our research looked at domestic and non-domestic. And they were kind of really interested in what's the potential for the non-profit sector to kind of take advantage of this opportunity through providing providing retrofit services, with that idea of, there's a lot of money coming forward for retrofit, and can we kind of keep it within the social economy? There were kind of two key components, I suppose, of the research. One was to have a bit of an understanding of what the current picture of non-profit retrofit provision in England is, and then based on that, kind of doing interviews, talking with organisations to understand what are some of the kind of enabling factors that would support the existing organisations to kind of grow and build their provision, but also for new entrants into the market, if you like. We worked with a few brilliant organisations, including Jonathan from People Powered Retrofit, Community Energy England, Locality, and Groundwork. So they kind of really supported us with kind of understanding the findings and developing these recommendations. The report is officially launching in the next few weeks. It's been a bit slow to get it out, but we're getting there. So we can kind of share that through your network for people who are interested to read. There's a lot to cover, and I'm probably going quite quickly, but I will just give some kind of brief findings. So kind of generally the non-profit retrofit sector is, if you like, in its early stages, but it is quickly evolving. And we know of at least 80 organisations across England delivering retrofit work at different stages of maturity. There's probably far more than that. But the only kind of coherent data set that we were able to use to understand the kind of scale of the sector was Community Energy England's State of the Sector reporting, which they do on a kind of annual basis to understand what Community Energy England members, so community energy organisations, are kind of doing. So that data set is brilliant. I suppose it doesn't capture all the organisations that are doing retrofit in the non-profit space, but who don't kind of label themselves as being community energy organisations. And, we know that there are a few really well-established organisations, CSE being one, People Powered Retrofit, Carbon Co-op being examples. But most organisations, we kind of, as a generalisation, are still quite early on in their business development journey. And it's a difficult market to enter, delivering kind of retrofit in a really successful way is complex. Customer needs are complex, kind of, you know, the market is constantly changing. So it's a challenging one to enter and scale up within. But the non-profit sector within this space is kind of incredibly creative, always innovating, always sharing ideas, and so it's challenging, but there's lots of really wonderful innovation happening in the space. And maybe I won't go through this. Jonathan kind of briefly touched on this idea of different types of approach. We kind of characterized it as 4 different types of approach. So the idea of this individualized service, which is Jonathan's reference to the one-stop shop. So kind of working with individual households. There are some organizations that are involved in more kind of area or neighborhood scale schemes. So how can you do retrofit at the street level? There are some organizations doing non-domestic retrofit, so really kind of small to medium-sized buildings that are kind of owned and used by charities and other non-profit organizations. And then there are also organizations doing providing training, for example, B4 Box, which Jonathan mentioned, developing kind of shared software solutions. So people-powered retrofit have a great kind of planner tool that other organizations are using to deliver their own retrofit. So there are kind of those 4 key, I suppose, if you like, characterizations of what's happening. And as I said, you know, maybe it's quite a young sector, but it is evolving and growing. And at least if you look at the Community Energy England members who are delivering retrofit services, kind of there's been a 13% increase in the last 2 years of organisations who would say, yes, we are delivering retrofit. So it's definitely growing as the demand for retrofit grows. Sorry, there's somehow the translation from my work laptop to this one, but this shows the types of organisations that we kind of encountered through our research. The one that says category name should be Community Benefit Society. But yeah, you can kind of see the split of the types of organisations in this non-profit space. And again, I probably don't need to go into this because Jonathan spoke to it, but just that idea of you know, through our research, it was really emphasized to us, you know, some of the benefits of the non-profit approach to kind of delivering retrofit, and they really speak to some of the like key challenges within the space of retrofit delivery. The fact that there is a huge lack of trust in kind of in the delivery process. People don't really understand what their options are or how to navigate the supply chain. How do you find a good contractor? Who can you trust? And you know, the non-profit organizations that we spoke to really kind of through their approaches are really addressing some of those barriers. You know, they're seen as trusted and impartial. They're really rooted in the place in which they're kind of delivering their work, so they understand the community. Some are really so embedded that they really understand the diverse needs of their community and are kind of able to kind of embed kind of inclusive design principles into their work. They're very sensitive to diversity. There's this brilliant sharing and collaborative ethos, which Jonathan spoke to. And as I said, there's lots of kind of creativity and piloting and testing of approaches to see, you know, what works best. So there's kind of huge benefit of this approach. And I'll just go through, not in full detail, but the kind of key recommendations that have come out of our research. Again, the report that will be published soon kind of goes into more detail, but the key recommendations that we kind of came out with, some of which speak to what government can do, but also to funders, local authorities, other organisations. So the first recommendation was really speaking to I suppose funders, given that this research was funded by a social investment organisation. But the first was support emerging and established organisations with seed finance. So just recognising that this sector is a complex one to enter into, and therefore that beginning bit of the journey comes with quite a lot of risk. The kind of benefit of being able to offer seed finance both to kind of fledgling organisations at the beginning of their journey, to established organisations who want to diversify their delivery, try new approaches, to kind of support the growing of established methods which have been piloted at a small scale, but want to be expanded. So just that kind of benefit of providing seed finance. Second recommendation was to support emerging organisations with shared infrastructure and mentoring. So shared infrastructure being, for example, CRM systems, branding expertise, legal advice, some of that kind of infrastructure that actually, if you develop it and you share it across organisations, it reduces that kind of entry barrier. And then also this mentoring recommendation, just there is a lot of wisdom in some of the more established organizations. And for example, People Powered Retrofit offer a mentoring and consultancy kind of support. They have a support offer, which is exactly the kind of example that we're speaking to of, if you're starting on this journey and you want to kind of develop your business idea and you want to speak to someone who's done that already. But those kind of mentoring opportunities would benefit from funding and support for them to actually happen. And also, I suppose, along with the shared infrastructure, just supporting the kind of cooperative approach of having open source tools that can be retrofitting tools that can be shared between organizations. So rather than every organization kind of developing their own. The third recommendation, which is to support organisations to expand their capacity through training and peer learning opportunities. Again, the retrofit sector is always changing. There's always new things to learn. So just that, to keep on top of kind of the latest information and data and learnings requires kind of constant training and upskilling, and to support organisations in that. And again, the peer learning thing, making sure that there are kind of funded opportunities for organizations to learn from each other, and to kind of strategically plan together about, what are the key things they're trying to tackle and how can they kind of learn from each other. Sorry, I realise this is a lot of information to take in. Fourth recommendation, specifically speaking to kind of those organisations that are doing non-domestic retrofit work. There's a much smaller proportion of organisations doing that, and so to kind of support the collaboration between the non-profit organisations who are delivering in the kind of non-domestic space, because it's kind of another level of complexity, and so to be able to share learning, especially given that there's a lot of money coming forward from dormant asset programs through social investors to kind of support the retrofitting of non-domestic buildings that are used by charities and social enterprises. It would be great to kind of support non-profit organisations to really take advantage of that opportunity. Design greater flexibility and capacity building into non-domestic retrofit funding. So again, just making sure there's space within those funded programs for there to be kind of an upskilling and a sharing, and to actually, prioritise the kind of contracting of non-profit organisations through those funded programmes. And then the final one is to kind of support the role of non-profit organisations in the growing number of area-based schemes. So Jonathan kind of spoke about area-based schemes in his presentation, but yeah, just the fact that local authorities are kind of increasingly looking at how to develop effective retrofit programs in their areas and how you can do that at the community scale. And to really, I suppose, there needs to be a bit of an upskilling process whereby local authorities are kind of able to understand what potential there is through using non-profit organisations within the area, who is in their area, what are they delivering, kind of there needs to be some sort of a brokering of that relationship. And also local authorities can be supported to kind of use their procurement process to prioritise non-profit organisations who really bring huge value alongside just the domestic, just the delivery of retrofit, but actually all of the social value that comes along with that. So really kind of developing programmes so that can be prioritised. And I will stop talking because that was a lot of information to try and squeeze into. I think I've gone over my 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Harriet. That was really good. And I look forward to seeing the full report soon. Okay, now we are moving on to Afshin from Repowering London.
Hi, so I'm going to break the norm because I don't have slides. I'm going to just speak. But, Jonathan, always lovely to hear you speak and keep learning from you and the progress you've made over the years. And we look to you as mentors. And great to hear your recommendations as well, because they're really spot on in terms of the needs as well, Harriet. So I suppose I can take the liberty of freestyling a little bit because I don't have slides, but I'm going to introduce repowering and what we're doing. So we've been Repowering London is focused in urban contexts. So we're accelerating the urban transition to an inclusive low carbon economy with local, clean, affordable energy. Our role is really about empowering urban and minoritized communities to plan, fund, build, and benefit from a low carbon future. So Repowering London is a development body. We are a community benefit society ourselves, but unlike many community energy organizations out there, we don't own any assets ourselves because we come in as a development body. We work with the community, create and establish the local energy co-op, help build capacity in the community through both kind of social innovation, technical innovation, and create clean projects that are fit for purpose for that particular local context. So operating for more than 10 years now, we've established 10 energy co-ops across London. And our success has been largely community rooftop solar over these last few years, but we've built the engagement expertise, the co-design expertise, the kind of participatory approaches to engaging low-income households in the energy transition, alongside modeling, access to finance, financial modeling, raising finance through community shares. All of that we've developed through our community rooftop place that kind of got us to a position where we're like, right, how do we deliver a retrofit service that is community-led, people-centered? And we've also been looking at how more strategically we have a framework which we call Repowered Community that is place-based, community-led, and technology agnostic. So we are, that theme about place-based is very much the approach and framework that we're using as well. And it's about, for us, it's really about integrating all of those different energy services in that place. Be it, energy generation, to retrofit, to energy local supply, to general advice, and really wrap that around bringing the benefits closer to the communities. So bringing the benefits of training, work experience, keeping the money locally, the local impact, jobs and affordable bills. So that's kind of framework that we have and the vision and ambition that we're working towards. And retrofit is a very key part of it. We've entered this space in the last couple of years. We started our journey on blocks of flats because, again, we work in an urban context and we've been developing a lot of projects on estates and blocks of flats in London. And it just felt quite a good fit to focus on blocks of flats because you've got this mixed tenure and there was a gap in the market. There wasn't actually a service being provided for blocks of flats, and looking at that kind of complexities that those legal governance structures provide. We worked with the GLA, the Greater London Authority, to develop a toolkit focused on blocks of flats, private owned ones, and therein started our journey. And we've been developing a whole kind of blocks of flats approach with further funding, innovation funding, and working with a cohort of blocks of flats. We've been looking at early stage feasibility studies, but very much part of this has been the co-design process. Bringing people into the decision-making process is really key, because very often the tenants and the residents living in the property get a bit disconnected from the retrofit process, because they're like, well, I don't own the flat, so I'm not a decision maker here. And I think that's quite key for us to bring those who are living in the properties into the decision-making process as well and collaborate. So it's a bit of like managing two different stakeholders. You've got the landlord or the freehold, you know, but you've also got those who are living in the properties and are renting. And how do we bring the two needs together? How do we service both of them so that they can come together collectively on this retrofit journey? Because retrofit is very intrusive. It's complex, as we've already heard. And how do we make it more relevant for residents? You know, that they're not interested in the carbon savings, and a lot of funding that is out there is very much carbon saving centric. It's not around you know, outcomes of warm, healthy homes. And we're, through our co-design and participatory approaches, we're trying to really bring that to life, the benefits to the residents. So there's quite a lot of upfront investment in the engagement process in getting people on board, but that is largely to mitigate against the risk further along the line in terms of people saying, well, you know, I've not been part of this process, and then just close off and not participate and benefit from the offer. And I think here's where I'm going to freestyle a little bit. The barriers that we've seen so far through a lot of schemes, which are social housing decarbonization funds that we've seen implemented. It's a very top-down approach, and local authorities are doing their best to, you know, with the limited resources, respond to these funding bids and put something together and create some benefits for the residents. But it is a top-down approach where the decisions are already made, the measures are already decided, the interventions and the people who are living in those properties know about it at the very last minute, and then it's a short turnaround where there's an engagement package and there's consent being sought from residents. And the evaluation of these schemes have shown that people are not willing to participate, and that lack of trust, that lack of communication and accountability comes up very, very often. And we're trying to break those barriers by a community-led, a people-centric approach, so that there's more upfront investment in people taking part. So our program has also evolved from blocks of flats to that street-by-street approach as well. So looking at a neighborhood, looking at a locality, we're looking at how we can provide an offer to both property types, if you like. And it's about also stacking economies of scale. We've got a lot of our work is delivered on the ground through local residents who live locally rooted, they live locally, they're in paid employment, they're an outreach team, and it makes sense for them to, if they're working in an area around fuel poverty advice and energy advice, then they're also promoting the retrofit offer and service. So it makes sense to have that place-based approach. It you know, from a business modeling point of view, it helps. I think I'd like to highlight like some of the recommendations, just adding to what Jonathan and Harriet have already mentioned, is there's a huge gap in terms of the access to finance. So a lot of people who meet, when we're promoting this service, we find that maybe even if 100 households are eligible, ultimately only 10% of those households actually go through installations, because a lot of the funding that's been out there, like EcoFlex and Eco, are very restrictive in terms of what measures are eligible. So there's that layer, and then so you have quite a huge dropout rate in terms of people who do access the money. And then the other barrier is, before you can access that funding, the households actually need to have some remedial measures done in their homes. So even before they can get to like the energy efficiency upgrade bit of their property, there's actually basic remedial measures that need to happen, which is under the landlord's obligation, and that hasn't been met. And which means that if those remedial measures don't take place, then the household can't access that funding, the eco funding. So there's like, but who funds this remedial measures? So there's again further dropout in the funnel of the people that come through. So this is quite complex, and we need more flexible finance at every pathway to increase the uptake of retrofit, because at the moment there's just too many barriers on this journey. And of course, do you want to echo Harriet's recommendation around, more funding, development funding. The retrofit marketplace isn't fully mature, isn't fully developed. There's quite a lot of, processes, systems, operations, some of the platforms, the digitalization of the service. There's a lot of development work to be done, and there's a lot of investment that's needed, upfront investment needed in organizations to deliver these services at scale. So there's definite need for more development funding, and I think a lot of the learnings and sharing the learning is also very important. The key thing that was going to unlock the growth of community and retrofit co-ops is that partnership working. And I think that's where government funding needs to be highlighting that collaboration at the outset. And that's where policy needs to really play a strong role in terms of really encouraging that collaboration, because what we're going to see is, again, that same old process where local authorities are responding to tight timescales of funding coming through, but if it's not a requirement to talk to your community energy organization or provider or the retrofit co-op, then they're not going to do it. And it needs to be baked into the funding that comes through as a way of ensuring that there is a more people-led approach to retrofit, because we know the barriers are huge. There's a reason why we still have a huge amount of properties that still need works doing. Previous mechanisms have failed, so we need to do something different. So I would definitely, from a national point of view, policy point of view, I think funding coming through towards for retrofit should really encourage that collaboration and a requirement for working with retrofit co-ops that exist. And the other one I think is another barrier for us has been around the skills. We spent like 6 months trying to recruit retrofit coordinators, retrofit assessors. Ultimately, we also made the decision to internally upskill staff and local team members, on the to be retrofit assessors as well as retrofit coordinators. That's a huge investment as an organization, and the demand is massive. If we're to kind of scale and deliver more and more, we will need that expertise, that coordinator, retrofit coordinators, and there are very few people out there already who have the experience, the breadth and skills that they can share. So they are a very valuable asset, and I think there's a huge skills shortage that needs meeting, and government funding needs to be channeled into organizations that we can build a pipeline, and so people can go through this journey of starting off as assessors to becoming coordinators, and gaining those skills and qualifications are really essential to make this process really robust, and to meet the industry standards and compliance is really essential. So I think I'm going to stop there, because everyone's already made really valuable points. I just wanted to pick up some of the key points from our side,
Thanks very much, Afshin. That's really helpful, and I think really gave a great overview of what you guys are doing, and how community energy projects can spearhead these works. Sam, would you like to come in now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Excellent. So all hard acts to follow. I'm just, really taken aback by all the work that Jonathan, Harriet, and Afshin are all doing, really being pioneers in this area. And I think we're aware of all the challenges. For Hackney, for example, it will take billions to undertake a retrofit program. We've got issues around obviously skills at the moment, as Afshin is saying. But I think what we're showing, as a kind of cooperative movement, and through all the examples that have been forward today, is what we can do at the moment, and how we can really take people along with us. Because I think one of the points that Afshin was talking about is repairs and retrofit. So in terms of social housing, for example, we have a social housing stock of 33,000 homes. That is the largest in terms of social housing with housing association. We have the largest social housing stock in the country. And so one of the key things is how retrofit, do you take people along with you when there can be issues around repairs, but there can be issues around damp and mold? And I think one of the key things is actually, and this is something that my colleagues, Councillor Young and now Deputy Mayor Mette Copen were really championing, which is about making damp and mold coterminous with issues around retrofit and looking for ways to bring that together as one piece. And then also in terms of looking at how we can reduce energy prices. We know that prices is one of the big things which is really moving the kind of political tectonic shifts that we're seeing. If you look at America, they had unprecedented growth, but the key thing was prices. So how do we bring this language around retrofit and around the climate emergency into into those areas around issues around repairs, issues around prices, and make them one and the same? And that's something that we are doing as Hackney, very much taking people along with us. So we have one of the biggest community energy funds in the country, £1 million fund. We work alongside CU in Stokey, which is a social enterprise, and we've got dozens of buildings now that have heat pumps, that have solar panels, and that's showing the tangible difference that working in collaboration with social enterprises and the council, and that partnership work and the community can have in some really iconic spaces in Hackney, which people use on a regular basis, and then reducing the bills for those community assets. So I think community energy is absolutely key, and it's the foundation and kind of shows what can be done in terms of the wider piece around retrofit. We are also, through the Social Housing Decarbonation Fund and the Public Decarbonation Fund, also we started hundreds of projects around street property houses that we own as the council, and then also looking at public buildings. And I think this all kind of comes together in some of the work we've been doing around things like citizen juries. So one of the big things that we did at Hackney is to do a citizen jury and to really listen to what people's priorities are. And one of the key thing that came out of that, which we citizen jury we held in April and May 2024, was around extreme heat and how do we tackle that, and how do we also link this to issues around reducing energy prices. And we had 15 jurors, they were picked by lottery. So that just shows you how you can bring the community along with you, and how it all kind of interlinks, really, that doing community energy, we are doing decarbonation projects through retrofit and starting that, but also bringing the community alongside you is key. And then I would say the other element which we're really leading on as a council, alongside some really pioneering councils such as Manchester, Westminster, and Islington, is around procurement and about social values. So we've just passed our social procurement and insourcing strategy, which really puts at the heart of it, social value, and if people don't know what social value is, it's around kind of things like making a greener environment, making a fairer environment. It's about London living wage. It's about raising standards around work. And what we've done in our strategy is up the amount of social value, so it's 15%, and we're going to try and get to 20% as soon as we possibly can. And we've also got a hierarchy in terms of how we procure, and in that is insourcing. In the first instance, we've insourced 320 jobs as a council, but as part of that hierarchy, we've got co-ops and we've got VCS. So we've very much embedded it into our strategy, and what we're looking to do. And I was just at an event earlier this morning with a whole host of businesses from Hackney, as we've got a dedicated business support program, and as a part of that, we've made kind of procurement readiness, contract readiness a key element of it. So it's all about, as Jonathan and Harriet were saying, you know, how do you make the opportunities accessible to social enterprises and to co-ops, and to those who are kind of leading on that community energy piece. And also, as Afshin was talking about, those, you know, those 10 co-ops which are operating, you know, in London. In terms of what, you know, local councillors can do, and in terms of some resources, I think what's really key for local councillors is to kind of, you know, map out your assets in your wards, and work with the community to see where there's potential for community energy, where there's potential for bidding, and really bring that up, you know, with the executive in your council, and really champion that. I think the other element is just making people aware of what is out there in terms of, you know, business support, what is out there in terms of organisations that, you know, community organisations or local businesses can tap into, and then also to really, you know, lobby your council to ensure they're maximising things like social value. So the Co-op Council's Innovation Network, which I'm on the values board of, has got a whole social values toolkit, which is, you know, showing how you can really champion that in how you procure as a council. The LGA has lots of good resources, UK 100, there's lots of things out there, but I think what's really key as we get the growth plans, which are going to be across the country, which is being led by the government, is about how the Warm Homes Plan is part of that, how we ensure this piece around retrofit is really acknowledged, and how we're trying to align as much as possible around procurement, around you know, trying to harness business support in particular to try and get you know, retrofit co-ops and other initiatives, particularly around the social economy, up to scale, because that's one of the big challenges. So yeah, those are my thoughts in terms of what Hackney's doing, and in terms of, you know, if you are a local councillor on this call, some of the things that you might be able to do, and also how kind of the community can engage as well, and different kind of tools you can use to do that. But I'm really you know, inspired by what I've heard today and about all the work that is happening, and showing what is possible.
Thanks so much, Sam. That was really interesting and great to hear all the fantastic work which Hackney has undertaken in this space. Okay, well, I'll open up now to a Q&A. So if anyone has a question for one of our speakers, do put your virtual hand up, or put any comments or questions you have in the chat. Would anyone like to go first? Okay, we've got a few coming in now. Great. Okay, so I saw Andy first, and then I'll go to Janice and then Phil.
As ever, Dan, the Co-op Party is an inspiration with these things. I'm just sad we've only got 16 participants. What I've heard tonight from each of the speakers is absolutely inspirational. If I can put it in the context of my local area, which is Walsall in the West Midlands, if anybody knows it, we've got, and I'm sorry to say I'm going to be slightly political, we've got a Tory, yeah, Dan's laughing, I can see that. We've got a Tory council, and its track record on retrofitting is abysmal. What I heard tonight from all of the speakers was go local. In many respects, go very local. Actually bypass councils and talk to communities and inspire them, in effect, to make demands of councils. Do any of the participants of the panel want to speak more on that?
Thank you, Andy. I'll just come to Janice and then Philip to do your questions, and then I'll go back to the speakers. And I think that's probably all we'll have time for, unfortunately.
Right, thank you. I'll be briefer.
Right.
How are you finding engaging with the private landlord? I'm from Brent, North West London, and we've got an awful lot of private landlords. So how do you actually get them on board?
Thank you, Janice. Philip?
Oh, good evening, everybody. As you probably gather by now, I'm quite senior to most of you on this call. I'd like to ask what the current government's policy is towards the local electricity bill and allowing community energy to access the grid, because I read today on social media that the Secretary of State, I forgot his name offhand, Miliband, I forgot his first name now, Mr. Miliband, he's not allowing any more access to the national grid because of lack of capacity. So therefore, how will the local electricity bill encourage community energy? And how can local councils effect any tangible means for community energy to generate electricity at a reasonable price?
Thanks, Philip. Okay, I think I'll give that one first and foremost to Sheen, and then we'll open up the other ones, which I've heard as well.
So just on the local electricity bill, which is about enabling local energy co-ops or local initiatives to sell electricity directly to residents. That's about kind of breaking down some of the barriers that currently exist, because we as energy co-ops, we generate electricity, and as generators, we aren't able to supply that electricity to residents because that's highly regulated. And the local electricity bill is about enabling that to happen and reducing those barriers and just making a commitment to more localized energy models. That's separate to the point you're making around the grid connections, because that's around, areas where there's and particularly in the southwest of the country, lots of, the grid is at capacity. So it's very difficult to get further generation assets online. And there's a huge queue, and any projects need to have heavy investment, and there's charges associated with that. And I think those are two different points. But I think in terms of the proposition that community energy brings by creating localized energy, electricity, creating local energy, and kind of maximizing and using a lot of that electricity locally, as well as reducing demand. What we're doing is creating a more efficient microgrid, if you like, localized energy system that will require less infrastructure and enhancements at the high voltage level. So it's kind of, I think, strategically and policy-wise, we want to encourage more of that localized, decentralized kind of energy, decarbonization of the energy for that very reason. But I think the community intervention is really important, because it's about the demand reduction as well. It's about connecting people to their energy sources and bringing them on a journey which enables behavior change, helps with those demand side response kind of management. So it's more looking at it more efficiently, which will help problem solving at that side. But I don't think we're there yet in terms of the policy. There's more work to be done, and I think Labour has a lot of thinking to be done, particularly on unlocking the grid constraint issue. I mean, that's a big one. So I wouldn't claim to have major expertise on that.
Thanks very much, Afshin. I'll come to Jonathan for what Janice's question.
Was that about the local?
Yeah, well, it was about landlords.
Landlords. I think landlords is challenging. I think it needs a stick and a carrot. approach, really. It needs MEES, minimum energy efficiency standards, to be properly enforced, and for local authorities to be resourced to enforce. And there needs to be access to low-cost loans and retrofit co-op solutions for those landlords as well. And more generally, we need a big push on social housing and council housing. Really, the market is too dominated by the private sector.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, I'll invite if our speakers have any final thoughts, and then I'll wrap up.
Just following on from, sorry, the private landlords. I mean, yeah, that's always such a challenge. And in Bristol, there is a particular organisation that specifically campaigns around, privately rented properties, especially when they're in a particularly bad situation, and just actually the kind of we shouldn't have to resort to that, but they have been quite successful at bringing kind of campaigns to the public eye about particularly bad landlords who have numerous properties in a bad situation, and kind of revealing to the public, imagery of the situations that people are living in. So I think there is a kind of role there for kind of public campaigning on that issue.
Thank you, Harriet. Sam?
Yeah, two things in terms of kind of actually reducing people's bills and some of the most low-income households. Hackney's done one of the first projects of its kind in the country, which is to put solar panels, on 28 blocks of, Hackney housing, and we're gonna, projected to make, around 15% cheaper, because this will be directly going to those households. So we are, looking to lead the way and pioneering and doing innovative projects. It's about how we do this on scale, and the Warm Homes Plan is, what the government are looking to look at, in terms of retrofit as a whole. I think there's a wider discussion around grids and what that can look like. But we are, leading projects like that in Hackney. I would say in terms of, the private rented sector, the Renters' Right Bill is a big step in the right direction. And to Section 21, we're going to see a lot of changes coming through that. One of the things that we are going to be consulting on as Hackney Council is around something called a selective licensing scheme, which would basically mean that all landlords would have to be registered in the area with this scheme, and it helps us to really check in on with them with a whole range of things, and some of the things that Jonathan was kind of just talking about. But as a council, we are absolutely committed to building a new generation social housing. We're going to be building 1,000 new council homes for social rent, and that ties in with what the government have put forward with 5.5 billion in terms of committed to genuinely affordable housing. But we know there's more to go, and new generation social housing absolutely key to tackling this issue around retrofit.
Thanks very much, Sam. And yeah, conscious of the time, so I just want to say a massive thank you to all our speakers for taking part this evening. I thought it was a really fascinating discussion, and it seems that participants also feel that. So much appreciated from us at the Co-operative Party. To attendees, please do keep an eye out for upcoming Co-op Party live events. We'll be having several through the first quarter of the year, so please do keep an eye out for them. But I just want to thank you all and wish you all a very good evening, and thanks again. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.